Joining the panel now is Shadow Secretary for International Trade, Nick Thomas-Symonds. Good morning to you. So you're sabotaging it, you're not helping it, and you don't have an alternative plan. That's the accusation.
Well, that's just completely wrong, isn't it, on both counts. On the issue of sabotage, the people who are responsible for the asylum backlog at the level it is are the ministers themselves, and they should stop blaming other people. And the idea that Labour doesn't have a plan is wrong as well. And we've been setting out that plan month after month after month, rather than wasting £140 million so far on the so-called Rwanda scheme. The government should use that money to actually tackle the vile crime of people smuggling. They should have a new cross-border police unit where we can tackle this issue to, bear down on those numbers that are taking that dangerous crossing across the English Channel. Secondly, get a grip of our asylum system where there are agreements with safe countries such as Albania. Let's fast-track those claims. Let's get a grip on it. Let's get those numbers down. And thirdly, we need to get returns agreements in place so that when people don't have a right to be here, they can be safely returned. That's
just to check, Mr. Thomas-Symonds, the Robert Jenrick in The Sun yesterday wrote an article. He's the immigration minister. He says left thwarts work to stop deportations, and he's got three particular accusations against you. So let me just put them to you really quickly in turn. Just give us, a short answer to each one. Jenrick says Labour don't believe we have a right to enforce our borders. Right or wrong?
Absolute nonsense. Of course, we have a right to enforce our borders.
He says they think we should give a free pass to illegal migrants to cross from France.
Again, nonsense. Any person risking their lives on that dangerous crossing is one too many.
And he says that people here illegally shouldn't be sent home.
And he's completely wrong as well. People who are found to have no right to be here should be returned. And it's the government that's failed to get in place those agreements that are required to enable those returns to take place.
And he says Keir Starmer is advised by a lawyer who works for a charity which tries to stop people being deported.
No, I believe that the lawyer, the solicitor that's being referred to there is somebody who did previously act on a task force for us with regard to looking at race equality issues, who no longer does. And I believe it's a person who also was on a group assisting with the Windrush scandal that was chaired by Priti Patel. So
why is the immigration minister making all these accusations about you?
The immigration minister, I suspect, is doing that because he's trying to distract from his own chronic failure when you have an asylum backlog that's at well over 170,000 people. The government is flailing around to blame anybody that they possibly can, except taking responsibility themselves. They chase headlines. They try to do make these short-term announcements. What they don't do is that hard work that is required to get this asylum backlog down. And it's to that, by the way, that Robert Jenrick should be putting his efforts rather than these rather increasingly desperate attacks to the opposition.
Ed Vaizey, can I just ask you, do you think that this, as you said earlier, the slogan "Stop the Boats," it is obviously one that does resonate with voters, but is it really the issue that it once was? Because at the moment we have a cost of living crisis and the economy is poor, and there are, the Liberal Democrats have done a survey out which says that, the quality of life for people who are earning money has gone down substantially. They're stopping going to restaurants. People are reducing going to see friends and family because it costs money. Our daily lives aren't generally plagued by the issue of asylum seekers. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah,
I understand why the Conservatives are doing it, and it's an important issue. But is it as toxic an issue as the Conservatives perhaps hope it is?
I think it potentially is a very toxic issue for the Conservatives because it does resonate with the public. And don't forget, it's the people on the right of the party, and indeed in parties even further to the right than the Conservative Party, who focus on this issue. Now, if Nigel Farage hadn't been so distracted by his debanking, he might well be, as we speak, out in a boat in the Channel banging on about this issue. So I think that, funny enough, is where the Conservatives are most worried, losing votes, as it were, to the more right-wing parties, as they did in the 2010s, and look where that took us. So I think that's one of the reasons why they want to outflank it. But I do agree with you, and it'd be interesting to see the polling. Immigration went right down as an issue after Brexit, for example, and people quite rightly are much more concerned about how much money they've got to spend and whether they can afford their mortgage.
I do find it fascinating how much airtime is given to this issue, when I do wonder, Kevin, whether actually on a daily basis, is this the issue that people are talking to each other about when they can afford to go down to the pub?
The environment has been polling as a bigger issue than migration and the boats, but the economy and the NHS, they're the two big issues. But Sunak's made it one of his 5 goals. It is the one he will not hit. Argue about the other 4, he will not be able to stop the boats. Now, Robert Jenrick is a bit of a nutter at times. It's all lies and sneers. Remember, he's the immigration minister.
I'm sure he'd disagree with you.
Who wanted, well, I'd happily have an argument with him about why he's a nutter. He's the one who, as the immigration minister, remember, who had cartoons painted over in a reception centre dealing with children. He's pretty callous like that. But I think the dirty secret, the dirty secret, I think, between the Conservatives and Labour is their policies aren't that far apart. And actually, there's a big room on rhetoric. Unquestionably,
but actually,
and the use of language.
That is the other
shadow
point.
immigration minister said he will keep the barge. Labour would keep the barges.
He says we'll inherit a mess. Is what he said.
And the army camps.
But your point as well about how this resonates. It may not be stop the boats that the public are thinking about every morning when they get up, but the ability, as it were, to effectively, to use a kind of bigger phrase, to paint Labour as being soft on crime, if I can put it that way, not tough enough, not a tough enough party to deal with these slightly unpalatable issues.
Labour's ahead now.
No, I'm just explaining the Tory thinking, because you look at the language that Ed talked about that Robert Jenrick was using in The Sun yesterday, it's pretty clear what he wants to, how he wants to put Labour, and he's using the boats issue as a way of doing
but Labour wants it to be a
getting madder.
Yeah, but Labour wants it to be a competence issue.
Yeah.
Who can stop the boats?
Yeah.
And the Labour argument is, unless you actually work with our European partners to stop the illegal gangs all across Europe, by the time they're on a boat, it's too late.
And I thought Nick Thomas-Symonds gave a good account of himself, because if you wanted to hammer the Tories, you would just go on about 170,000 asylum seekers who haven't been processed.